In the United States, college enrollment has risen by 8,331,000 students in the last 30 years. As the number of college students continues to grow, even during a recession, schools like Purdue, housing 39,256 students, continue to grow as well.
At Purdue, these large numbers mean one thing: large lecture halls. Already, students have experienced classes of outrageous numbers like 400 people. With such large classes, it's hard to find a student at Purdue who hasn't taken one. Have you ever had a large lecture class?
I'm in a lecture class of 160 students. It's my physics class.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, I've had a few.
Yes, I have had lecture classes.
Yes, I have.
Lecture halls, for the most part, are used in institutions for a few reasons. One is that there just aren't enough teachers for classrooms to split up a 400-student class into 20 different sections. Another is that more classes mean more teachers, and more teachers mean more expenses that will have to fall into the students. While Purdue strives to keep a lower tuition for students, the cost of hiring enough teachers in order to decrease class size would skyrocket tuition.
But are lecture halls really such a bad thing? Since the beginning of public education, people have been debating on whether or not size really matters. There are people on both sides of that argument, many who think that large classes aren't really that harmful. Lectures actually allow many students to learn from someone who has a lot of experience in the field they are instructing in, instead of classes that are taught by only TAs. In those classes, the student often worries about whether or not the person teaching them will know their stuff. The consistency of having one teacher for all or most of the students also helps in avoiding the confusion of being taught in a different way than not knowing what to do on test day, or the possible unequal grading that may accompany different teachers teaching the same class. Learning has also shown to be affected more by the quality of the teacher, not necessarily the size of the class. Does it bother you more to be in a large class or to have a bad teacher?
Probably a bad teacher, yeah.
Bad teacher is what bothers me more.
I think I would rather have a large class with a better teacher.
It bothers me more to have a bad teacher in a small class. I'd rather have a good teacher in a bigger class.
Alright, so you think that it depends more on the good teacher?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Lecturing is also the most widely used teaching approach in universities, even in classes that aren't necessarily considered large. However, students tend to have issues with over-lecturing. Is that the problem we're dealing with here? Lecture halls are full of distractions. For instance, cell phones. In a small classroom, it's easy for teachers to prohibit cell phones because they can easily notice a student using one and simply ask them to leave class. In a large lecture, it's impossible to ban cell phones because a professor can't possibly watch every single student. When students are on their cell phones, it prevents them from paying attention to the material being taught. Smaller classrooms make it less likely for students to get distracted when they know the teacher is in perfect sight and can see what they're doing. The same thing goes for laptops as it does for cell phones.
Do you use your cell phones during large lectures?
Yes.
I use it, and other people around me definitely do as well.
Yes. Yes, I do, and I see people on them all the time.
Yeah, nearly everyone's on Facebook on their laptops or on their cell phones.
A large benefit of smaller classrooms is students get comfortable with the people around them and establish a closer relationship with the teacher, making it much easier to ask questions and allowing for one-on-one time with the professor. In large lecture halls, it is incredibly intimidating to ask questions, and that's if the professor even asks if there are any. Lecture halls also make for no one-on-one time with students.
Do you feel more comfortable asking questions in a small class?
Definitely.
And do professors in large classes ever often offer a question and answer session?
Yes, but I don't usually ask questions.
Another problem with large lectures is attendance. With small classrooms, it's easy for teachers to keep track of who's there and who isn't, but with the large lectures, it's humanly impossible to track students' attendance. When attendance isn't being kept track of, students feel less obligated to go to class, often show up late, and when the lecture gets boring, they just get up and leave. Some professors use the clicker method of tracking attendance, but then students will hand it off to a buddy who can click in for them without the professor even knowing. Have you ever skipped a large lecture class?
In my large lecture classes, yeah, but not my smaller ones.
Because professors do not go around checking students' IDs for things such as quizzes and such large lectures, academic dishonesty is a huge problem as well. All of the problems with lecture halls make it obvious that they should be replaced with smaller classes. It would make for better learning environments and would boost Purdue's academic credibility.
Overall, in your experience at Purdue, do you think your small or large classes were more beneficial to your education?
I think overall my smaller classes probably.
I've liked my smaller classes better, but then I do learn a lot from my large classes as well.
I think it depends on the teacher, but I would say my smaller lectures.
It depends on the professor, but I'd say smaller classes are probably better because you could pay more attention in those classes. Versus a large class, you're going to be on your phone more often.